Hello and welcome to Forensic Focus Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Gullon-Scott, and today we are diving into a conversation that places both innovation and investigator well-being at the heart of digital forensics. In this episode, we're going to showcase the capabilities of Semantics 21, a platform that is transforming the landscape of digital forensics. While cutting-edge technology often takes center stage, today we're placing a special emphasis on something just as critical, and that's the protective features built into the platform that support mental health and well-being of digital forensic investigators. Joining me to showcase this is Tom Oldroyd, who is the Director of Strategy and Sales at Semantics 21, and together we'll be discussing how the platform enhances efficiency, reduces unnecessary exposure to harmful material, and introduces forward-thinking tools designed with the welfare of the investigators in mind. Whether you're a practitioner, a manager, or simply someone interested in the evolving world of digital forensics, this is an episode you are not going to want to miss. Thanks for joining me, Tom.
Hi, Paul. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. So we're going to talk about showcase the features of Semantics 21, as well as talk about the well-being features that you guys have developed and built into the product.
Thank you for having us on the podcast. We're delighted really to sort of showcase what the team at Semantics 21 have been designing. I'm really quite lucky because, as you know, my background, I was in policing for 17 years and I ran a digital forensic unit as a sergeant. Prior to joining the police, I was always a geek. I worked in the pharmaceuticals industry. So naturally going into policing, you fall back into digital. But I think the subject we talk about is digital crime. And sadly, most of that digital crime is evolving around sort of the protection of children and CSAM investigations.
Yeah.
I've dealt years of working with all the different forensic tools. I've been lucky to work with Apple and the guys over there. I've worked with obviously Cellbrite, and now I'm, as you say, I'm the director of sales and strategy for Semantics 21, UK-based business, sole mission, help law enforcement rescue as many kids as possible, and design cutting-edge technology that does that job efficiently, cost-effective. But obviously, we do have a good understanding that the dangers that the digital forensic investigators face doing their job, and it probably is one of the worst jobs in policing, one of the most challenging, but also one of the most rewarding, which is why I know so many people want to do it. But obviously, it does just come with that danger side. So, we're really glad to be able to show what we have on offer.
Thanks for joining me, Tom. And it's fair to say that, just to sort of further say what you were saying, there is no other job like a digital forensic investigator's role, is there really? Because they are exposed to this material on a daily basis.
Definitely. And having worked in policing, and I kind of say it a bit tongue in cheek, I mean, when you work on a firearms team within police and you had special priority bonuses for £1,000, and if you worked on a body recovery unit, had another £1,000. And I've worked on a surveillance team, had another £1,000. And all of those jobs, they had those bonuses for a reason, because they were the jobs that were difficult to do. And I remember then when I turned up in the digital forensics team and we were dealing with CSAM investigations, and it was like, where's the bonus? Where's the extra perk for us having to do a job that I personally believe was far more damaging, far more dangerous than the other roles that we were getting those extra payments for, because the police force saw them as being difficult positions to fill. I think personally, it's not. We don't respect digital forensics enough, and the types of work that people do. I think it's very taboo. I think historically it's been keep those people that deal with computers out of the way, and they're locked away in a cupboard. But the job is now all digital, and sadly a lot of that is involving CSAM or extremist type content media review. It is a tricky challenge to face today.
It is. I think even right now, the mental health effects of working as a DFI, the dangers of working as a DFI, are hugely underrated. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's one of them where we've never had the statistics. We've never had the data to back up the types of volumes of crime that people are having to review. We know there's backlogs, and it's kind of one of those things we kind of expect there to be a backlog of work within digital forensics. But that just means there's never really a downtime for those people doing the work. It's job after job after job without that decompression, that relaxing stage, the time that you can take a break. That doesn't really happen in the digital field. Whereas if you look at football violence or any other sorts of crime, which is very dangerous and very hands-on, they do have the times to have to take a break and step away from those tasks. And we don't see that in the digital world. We just see the demands getting more and more.
Yeah, and that of course is backed up by research which has been done in the field, which shows that the amount of grooming cases, sharing of indecent material, is exponentially growing. I read a report not so long back which identified the distribution of indecent material over the past 4 years has grown by over 300%. I mean, that's a frightening statistic.
It is, and I think the scary thing is probably we've all thought we got over the hump. We thought we were actually seeing that we were at the peak of demand with this type of crime. I don't think we are. I think we're still seeing the world become more digital. We're now seeing the introduction of AI, which allows us to do things a lot quicker and on a larger scale. I don't think we're actually anywhere near the peak. I think you're right. Those numbers are still going up and they're alarming. But I think they're going to continue to go up, even with the amount of effort the police are putting in today.
I agree. I think it's it's an area where with the introduction of the internet and everything being so accessible, and especially across boundaries and borders, and which are international as well, it just makes it so much easier for individuals with an interest in children to share that kind of material, doesn't it?
It does, and I think especially as a company, when we work with the big tech firms, we're quite lucky that when you work in law enforcement, you pretty much gatekeep it away from talking with people like Meta or Microsoft or Amazon, Google. They're very nervous around dealing with law enforcement direct. But having left and now work for the private sector, we have open relationships with those companies because they're doing the right thing. They're wanting to protect their network. They're wanting to protect their customers. They don't want to have criminals using their platforms. And when we talk to them and we see how they're dealing with the scale and it's increasing, now they're seeing people commercialize CSAM sort of offences because they know that there's revenue to be made from offending and attacking a child abroad. Somebody's making money out of that. And that's where they're exploiting these platforms. And the platforms are doing the best they can to chase the money, to see who's paying for this abuse to happen, and obviously put the rescue missions in place. We normally find those countries aren't as sort of advanced as the Western world, and obviously criminals exploit that. So yeah, the demand is still going up.
Yeah, I agree. So can we have a look at S21?
Of course we can. Yeah, so we'll share my screen and show you what we've been busy working on sort of over the last few years. Semantics 21 really, as I said, we were founded with the mission of taking artificial intelligence and empowering government departments with reviewing big scale media. And then obviously as we've grown the company, new tactics have come on board. We've seen new technology advances that we can then take and we can benefit our users. We've looked at what we've done historically, and we would never criticize any of the efforts anyone's ever done previously, but we want to advance. We want to make things even better. So when we look at database and when we look at photo DNA, how AI can be used for good, we need to use technology. We just can't stay still, and that's where it's really nice working with a company that's got that ethical hat on, that we can keep building solutions and obviously work with big tech providers to help us, because as a small British business, there's only so much we can afford to do. But when we ask for help from the likes of the team from Amazon or Google and say, look, we could just really do with some advice, or how would we be able to process this more efficiently, because they know we're here and we're on a mission to rescue kids, we do get help from those big companies, which is nice to see. So The main product we have is called S21 LASERi-X. The idea is that we can take all digital media from as many platforms as possible. So if you're using MSAB or Cellbrite to download mobile phones, we can take the UFDR files, we can take your grey key extractions. If you're using Axiom for computer forensics or Belkasoft, again, you could do all your computer analysis in those devices, but export the media into this program, and we can utilize the AI to start to do that heavy lifting. If you've got 5 million pictures to look at, which is probably an average size case these days, you really don't want to be going from page to page to page. We need to apply intelligence so that we can find the key evidence as fast as possible to also reduce that exposure levels. And one of the key things we find is everyone internationally, we're all doing the same type of investigations. So we know that databasing is the quickest way of finding indecent images. It always has been and always will be. The hash value of a file is really important. And in our software, we have the ability for you to create as many databases as you want. They're not encrypted, and that's done on purpose so that you can connect other forensic tools to what we use MySQL or MySQL as a backend databasing system. And that would allow you then to add your Project Vic databases, your CADE, Nitra. It's a database all your own. So the idea is that you will have your local databases run normally by Project Vic or your country. And that means that when you're bringing digital evidence in, we can do that comparison. And those databases have been a really good idea to have people collectively join those hashes together in one set. Now, at S21, we realized it's a good idea, but we should be doing something better because we know that everyone globally is trying to tackle the same thing. Although an indecent image may be graded slightly different abroad, it really makes no difference to us. We can still utilize that data. And what Semantics 21 have created is this here. It's called the Global Alliance Database. And it's probably, it doesn't get enough credit for how clever and intelligent the system is and how easy it is to use. But simply, you would have your local database here, your MySQL database. You would export to the Alliance. You agree to the terms and conditions. Everyone has to have terms and conditions. You choose what data you want to share, provide an organization, name and details, and then you have optional export options. So if your agency only wants to share the hash values and the label that you've applied for your country, that's fine, that's brilliant. But if you are prepared to apply flags, the analysis details, the GPS data, device makes and model information, or the notes, then that can also come into the database that we control. So it's called the Global Alliance Database. You would then generate an export. It takes a few seconds. It's really nice and quick. And that would create an exported file which is encrypted. And it remains encrypted. So even when it's transferred to us, it remains encrypted. And this is all offline. So you then send us that file. We would then send you the master file back. And again, you agree to the terms and conditions. You then navigate to where that file's kept. So I can navigate to the Global Alliance file, click OK, and that's it. That's now added 3.1 billion hashes that are community member hash values. So we've now got this deployed in numerous countries across the world. This is legally held content. This is CSAM material. This is AI hashes. This is revenge pornography, flagged files. And this allows us now to create a truly global, offline, end-to-end encrypted system. So when we talk about speed and efficiency, databases, that's what they're very good at doing. And this is where we see also that reduction in exposure levels, because we know that when we're looking at files that have been labeled internationally as legally held, they probably are legally held materials. You still have to verify them as a human and just double check, but it means that you've now got access to a database of 3.1 billion hashes, all law enforcement data. It's contribution led. It doesn't cost anyone anything to access it. Our database is limited to our software at the moment, but we have reached out to the big forensic providers to say there is going to be an API connectivity into the database. So ultimately, we're just doing this on behalf of the community so that this will become tool agnostic. And again, like I say, it's because we know everyone's on the same mission, but no one historically has joined all the dots together until now through Semantics 21.
Tom, can I just ask, You say there's 3.1 billion hashes stored in your international based database. How does that compare to what's held in CADE currently?
So if we look at UK Home Office CADE, it's probably one of the biggest databases available. I think they stand around about 120 million. So yeah, we're considerably bigger. It's, as I say, we aren't sort of a company that's criticising or saying don't use CADE. We're not saying don't use Project Vic. What we're saying is this is evolution. This is the
Yeah.
next gen. This is secure and encrypted. So there is no risk of losing a JSON file that could have historically happened, because back then when those databases were created, privacy concerns weren't as tight as they are today, and obviously legislation isn't as good as it is today around data protection. So that's why we had to evolve with time. That's why when we look at the import of 3.1 billion hashes, it takes less than a second. If we look
Yeah.
at CADE today, if we try and import the 120, or if we take Project Vic in America, which is about 90 million, it will normally take you 10, 12, 15 hours to ingest that data as it's a JSON file. That's not good. We don't want investigators having to wait and waste that time having to import data. There are better ways of working today. So that's where we've evolved to.
So Semantics offers a global database which contains 3.1 billion, and it's time saving when it comes to the import of those hash values.
Exactly. And what that means is when we now bring in mobile phones or computer evidence or cloud data and we bring it into the software, no matter what the source is, doesn't matter if it's Cellbrite, Magnet, whoever you've downloaded the device with, we now add that media. Its first job is, hey, I want to compare against the database because I can check the hash values and I can check to see if they've been seen anywhere in the world before. And if they have, I'll put them in a filter and I'll say, hey, this file's been seen in Australia and it was graded as a legally held image, or this image here has been seen before and it's been graded by a Canadian investigator as a Cat 1 image, and Cat 1 in Canada would mean that it's a CSAM image. So even though in America and Canada they normally have sort of a very smaller category number where category 1 would be sexual abuse of a child, whereas in the UK we would say, well, that could be an A, B, or a C image because we break down the types of CSAM image. Well, all I would need to do is say, well, this is a label 1 in Canada, so I can then look on the screen and then I'd say, okay, in the UK that would then be classed as a Cat A, and I now categorize it as a Cat A. But time to evidence, this is incredibly quick because we're now utilizing the data and the efforts that somebody else has done to benefit our cases. And we're seeing with big agencies across the world that normally when they add a mobile phone or a computer today into the software, between 50 and 70% of the data is pre-labeled. And we've actually had customers contact our support team to say, we think the software is broken because there's not many images on the grid. We're not seeing the whole 300,000 pictures that we expected to see. And then when we've said, okay, just tell us what you see in the filters, well, everything here is labeled. And it's like, yes, because the database has been so efficient, you only have 50,000 files to actually review. The rest of
Left
them
to
have
actually
been
look at.
labeled already.
Yeah.
And that is a huge time saver. And this is where we say when we want to look at we're overworking and burning out our staff, well, that could be because they're not working very efficiently because historically we haven't had these sorts of setups. So
Yeah.
let's work more efficient and let's start working collectively together.
So in theory, it not only expedites cases, but because of the vast hash database that Semantics provides, and you did say they provide that free, don't they?
Yeah, so it's completely free. So all you have to do is you have to contribute. So you have to be part of the community. And the reason being is when you contribute, you agree to the terms and conditions of the usage of the system. Just to make sure we do comply with GDPR rules across Europe, that the system is also compatible with US and Canadian laws for data handling. And as I say, we can't see inside the database. So it's an
Yeah.
end-to-end encrypted system. That's how kind of like our get out of jail free system. It's what internationally is accepted now, that when we're doing police to police data, that's how it's got to be. And everyone that has access is from an approved country. And the database even has an expiry. So after 90 days, the database will self destruct. So if we find that there are issues with a particular country, their political stance may change or whatever would happen, it means that the database only has a lifespan of a shorter period of time. Then all you would need to do is you just re-download the latest version again when it's all private controlled access and fully audited, to make sure the database is going to the right people. And again, it's encrypted with the software so that people can't break in and steal those hashes, because we appreciate some of that data there could be deemed to be sensitive. So again, it's gone through its full audits. I'd probably say it is the most secure CSAM hash intelligence database in the world, and it's also the largest. And yes, it doesn't cost anything.
So it not only expedites the case, but because of the vast hash database that it actually holds, it very quickly identifies and automatically categorizes the indecent imagery. And
Yeah,
that, obviously, from a psychological point of view, reduces the exposure to DFIs immeasurably, massively.
yeah, definitely. And what I'll do is I'll show you a case and a workflow that we would normally expect people to do for a small computer export, and yeah, we can prove exactly how fast this can run. So
Yeah, please
uh,
do.
again, we fill in normal case information just so we can track what the software is doing. If the type of investigation isn't CSAM, you just tell the software this isn't a CSAM investigation. The reason we have that is some of our customers aren't in the sex offences world. They're the tax office, they're border force. They don't want references to child abuse shown in our computers, in our software. So we actually pivot the software to remove any reference to child abuse, so that if you're dealing with an investigation that is non-child abuse, you're not going to get that looking for indecent images or the CSAM detectors that are being there. So again, even the design of the software, we're taking into consideration the end user to make sure that we're building things as efficiently as we can. Now, in here, we just going to select an X-Ways export. We do like the guys at X-Ways. They're a very good carver from all of our testing. So we always maximize the evidence recovery. We've got support for your UFDRs, your grey keys, zips. There's an ear1 sort of processor, and you just build up your evidence. And again, if we have multiple product, so we have phone and computers, put it into one product, because we can then deduplicate and we can use those same databases. You're not having to review the iPhone in Cellbrite Physical Analyzer. You're not then having to look at the iPad in Axiom, where you're probably seeing duplication of the evidence, which means you're getting double the amount of exposure. So again, there is method in our madness for the way in which we work. So in this case here, we would run the database. We simply just say turn on the database. We can double check to make sure which databases are enabled. We could say that this is a CSAM investigation from NICMEC. Well, I could very simply navigate to my NICMEC cyber tip and say OK, and that's now parsed all the relevant data out that NICMEC cyber tip, and that's going to be one of the early searches that the system's going to run against. So I'm not having to manually now look for the data from the cyber tip that's come from NICMEC. The system's going to do that now automatically for me. So again, it reduces the demand on you as the investigator.
Yeah.
We've got Project Arachnid. This is the Canadian Centre for Protection of Children. They provided us their HashSet database. So they obviously trawl the web looking for indecent material. They've worked with us, and we now have access to their HashSet database. It's encrypted. It's locked into the software. Again, we want to make things as efficient and as quick as possible. We can go through, and these are some of the options we would have for some of the AIs. From color analysis, from object detection. We work with the sex industry, the adult pornography industry, to look at the types of content that they're seeing. We're looking at sex positions, sex toys, sex objects, because again, when we have a crossover of child abuse with adult imagery, we need to know what they all look like and what sort of objects you may need to search to speed up your analysis. But we have a dedicated CSAM, an adult porn detector. So an AI designed by us, where we've worked with international agencies to say we need representative samples of genuine CSAM that we can teach the AI to learn. And during the research, the team found very early on, many years ago, that CSAM in the UK, it actually looked in one particular way. But when we worked with Latin America customers, we found that CSAM that they were exposed to, or Asia Pacific region, was different. So to teach an AI model purely on westernized CSAM would introduce that bias. So when you're then trying to use an AI somewhere else in the world, or CSAM's being shared across borders that we're not used to seeing, the AI would have difficulty detecting it. So again, the team here, that's their expertise. They're AI engineers. They can take all these things into consideration. So by simply saying CSAM detector, we can then see that there's a graphics card on my laptop, and this software works on just basic normal hardware. It doesn't need to be anything that's sort of a rocket ship. We've got junk filter technology, so we can filter all that low-level risk material, so things that may have come from social media, videos that are very short, that have probably been carved, little tiny 1-second videos, anything that the operating system may have identified. Again, everything that's low level, which we will call junk. Now, we do that on purpose because sometimes we don't need the AI to run on the junk. So we want to be cost efficient with your energy and your time. But what happens on a Friday afternoon when you're working Monday to Friday in a digital forensics lab? You really shouldn't be looking at CSAM. It shouldn't really be the last thing you're having to do, unless it's operationally required that you need to do it urgently. But what we would say to people and advise them to do is, that Friday in the afternoon, look at the junk. We know you've got to look at the low level, non-risk material or low risk material, but pivot the search. Instead of looking for CSAM instantly, switch the search, because then at least you can have a bit of decompression time. You can get through the junk files and still grade them as all legally held and get them out of the way, but it's not something that you're going to see that awful video or picture that when you're leaving work and going home, that's the last thing you remember. And you haven't got your peers around you to sort of speak to or have that sort of safety net, because it's probably not the sort of matter you want to talk to your family about, because again, it's not something that the normal person really needs to know about. So again, we use a junk filter in that reason as well.
And what you've just said about you're just about to leave work on a Friday, and it's the images and videos that you're normally exposed to aren't something that you want to take home and think about over the weekend, and that's reflected quite strongly in research that's been done, which suggests that at the end of the day, DFIs shouldn't be grading, so they don't actually take those images home with them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we're starting to see everything we do in our software, we track. So the MySQL database, it's optional for users to have. It's not a performance managing system, it's an exposure management system. We want investigators to be able to have that transparency of, look what I'm exposed to. And as a unit manager, and having been there, I never knew when I had 50 CSAM cases and I divvied them out to each of the staff. I never really knew who had a negative case or who had the world's worst case. We talk about it, but I would never know the volumes of data. And that's where, when I came to Semantics, I was like, we need to track that. We need to know what the exposure level is and what the numbers look like, so that managers have a good oversight. And that's what we do with the software. So everything we're doing here, when we're adding the media in and you're grading, it gets tracked in the database. And then we have a separate application called the Wellbeing Monitor, which we'll show you, which then, as a manager, I can see every investigation, every exhibit. I can see who's graded it, how long it's taken them, and I can see the demand and the risk. And like you say, it's that risk that we're now identifying to say, Friday afternoon, don't grade. Don't grade outside the operational hours of 9 till 5, because again, if people are grading late at night on their own without their peers around, again, that could be quite damaging, that you're concentrating too much on your work, and you do need to sometimes just pull away from the screen a bit.
And of course, when you're talking about cases, cases don't mean individual items that have been seized. Many cases contain multiple items, so the exposure potentially can be huge per case, can't it?
It is, and that's I think one of the things we've noticed when company or when organisations and police forces have downloaded a phone using one product and then a computer with another. If we look at the iPhone, the Apple infrastructure, if you download my devices within the house, I've got 2 phones, 3 iPads. Not sounding like I've got lots of money here, but I've got old iPads. I've got the mini iPad. I've got 2 Macs in the house. You're probably going to find exactly the same photos because the photo share is on. So if you downloaded them and looked at them in individual sort of products and forensic products, you're going to get that duplicity. Whereas bringing it in together, and you're still going to be looking at well over 150,000 files that are privately owned by family ones. Then you're going to have all the internet cache. It's normal to now be hitting cases into the millions, and we have had cases where people have had to come to us and use our software because they've used another product that couldn't deal with the volumes of 20, 30, 40 million images. Whereas for us, we've designed the software to deal with scale. And again, we're blown away with the numbers of pictures that people are having to go through. And one of the features here on the screen is to set a threshold. This is something the UK government decided to bring in, that when you graded to a certain threshold, it made no difference to the charging decision. When you had that large collection, the person wasn't going to get any longer term in prison because they hit the top threshold. Yeah. And this was added into the product to say, okay, well, we can do that. We can do that calculation for you. And we can show you how far you're through the grading to hit that percentage. And then the software will say, hey, you've hit your threshold. You can stop. But obviously that comes with a big risk. And there's the CAIRAT system here where you would carry out that risk assessment to say, does the person have access to children? Are they in a position of trust? Previous offences? And really, I think we would say you could have your spider sensors on here. If you think you're coming across first generation material, don't do the thresholding. But when we see that there's just volume crime, as people would call it now, with CSAM investigation, we built in the threshold system for that particular purpose, just because of the sheer volume. Now, we'll go over this very quick. I'm mindful of time, but we prioritize victim rescue. That's the difference between our software and other solutions on the market. We can categorize, but we have a lot of clever capability to find those victims. And obviously, we know with the scale and the numbers of crimes going up, there are going to be more victims out there that do need to be rescued. So, very simple, human readable answers and questions that we just ask for photos of your victims, your suspects, and the devices you expect to see, even the areas you think they may be offending, the type of offender they are. And once you've answered those questions, you then click the go button, and the software then will take all that intelligence you've applied to your case, and that's how we rescue victims a lot quicker than we historically have. Now, as I said before, this is just a very small case. We're showing you it's 42,000 files. On my laptop, the import speed is about 2.5 million pictures a minute. So it's incredibly fast at bringing data in. But in the background, you'll see that the images are loaded onto the grid. So I can now already start to go through page after page after page. Or if I wanted to look at the videos, I can even hover over the videos and see every frame of the videos, because the software has been designed to be quick and efficient. We don't want you to have to wait there for delays. And then you can see we've compared to some of the databases already. So we're identifying files that are legally held low risk from the NSRL. We're now calculating the photo DNA to look for files that are visually similar based on the photo DNA scores. And that's how we can stack images on top of each other. So we're not having to see all those images that are so similar on the grid. And in the background now, you can see the images are automatically being graded. Now, again, this is a test demo case, but the database is fast. This is comparing not only against my small 500,000 files in my local MySQL database, but that is also now comparing against the 3.1 billion hashes that we have in the Global Alliance database. And this is where we see a huge benefit. And this is where people really are sort of excited by the development and the speed that the database is actually growing to allow us to find those files. And all I need to do is simply expand out of the box here, and we could see a breakdown of my Global Alliance scores. Now, we added a NICMEC cyber tip, and these are the results from that NICMEC cyber tip. So time to evidence is far quicker than we've had before. This is where we can then say that we know that these are CSAM material. We could then go and look in the same directory. We could look at the same time and dates to see that most sex offenders have a type of OCD. We know that they're probably going to store data in the same location. So we can go straight there and we can make that decision of this person, when they're being interviewed, now needs to answer why these are on their machine, and hopefully get that quicker conviction. Again, so we're not having to drag out an investigation. And on the left, this is the grades. This is where we would now see instantly a breakdown. And again, this is a test case, but this is where we would see a breakdown of those international grades. If I wanted to only see legally held content that's been identified by Canadians, I simply put a tick in the box. And if I wanted to see who graded it, I click on the world icon, and this will now give me a breakdown of who has seen that file and when. And obviously we've got a pop-up here just popped up that tells me I've got some Project Arachnid hits as well. So instantly, within a few seconds, we're finding the key evidence, we're drawing the connections globally to where the images has previously been seen
Mm-hmm.
without really a stress and hardly a great deal of work. And my mindset is when I'm clicking on to show me category A, B's, and C's, I know what I'm going to see. The
Yes.
database may have errors. We fully understand that humans make mistakes. If you
Yeah.
come across an error in the database, you just simply correct it. The database will update the next time round. So this is where we see big data can make a huge amount of difference. And as we said before, Paul, the Friday afternoon when you only want to look at the legally held data, well, just simply click what you want to see and get yourself in the mindset you're having to then only look at the data that you're selecting from what everyone else has sort of come across. And again, when you're adding those labels and grades on, it's all being stored here in the wellbeing statistics, so that we could see a breakdown of cases I've been involved in, my previous cases in the last 30 days or last 100 days, and that is what's being tracked. And that obviously allows us to add an extra level of security to the end users as well.
Can we see the well-being monitor again?
Yeah, so in the bottom corner, we've got this is where we want to always be transparent with people. There's a lot of safety mechanisms built into the solution, whether it be you may want to have limited distractions. So
Mhm.
we can remove all the buttons from the screen. You just get the grids. We can scroll up the grids. If we need to, we can put auto scroll on. Again, this is one of the features that really we probably don't take into consideration enough. But just to be able to say, and again, we're not generating frames, the frames are being generated live, but to even put things on like auto scroll, the stress of having to not have to go through page after page, we can now sit there with a cup of coffee, we can go through the images, and when we see the relevant image, we can then stop. It's little things like that that we add into the product. But when we look at what we're tracking, we can look at the statistics of the grades you've done, so your A, Bs, and Cs. We also have the ability that we have play wellbeing videos. So um, after so many minutes of you grading, and it's an intelligent counter, not just a counter that happens every 30 minutes, but we know when you've been grading material, and we will then say the recommended time is 30 minutes, take a break. Now, as part of that process, we also say, because we know you have been seeing indecent images, to cleanse your mind is to actually watch 3 separate videos of different subject matters. And that has been proven that it helps decompress and it helps you forget what you've been looking at because you're concentrating on these videos. Kind of like cleaning the RAM in a computer system is kind of how we sort of put it.
Yeah.
There's overlays in terms of how you would want your images to be. Would you want them to have a glass overlay? Do you want images to be pixelated? Would you want the border outline applying to the thing? Would you like blocks? Would you want edge? So we only see the edge files as well. We can also turn on grayscale mode. So if we only wanted to see images in grayscale, we could do that as well. It just means that we've got a lot more flexibility in sort of the security of the user. And the reason why we look at grayscale, we always tell people don't grade with grayscale turned on. Do that when you're creating your reports, because the human brain, we can detect things incredibly quickly without sort of really fully understanding why. And one of the things we always talk about is if we see someone with a large cut on their arm and lots of blood, if we see it in colour, the hairs on our arm stick up and we realise that that's danger. We see that same image in grayscale, we don't actually react to it in the same way. And it's the same with CSAM material, that if you're grading, you need to see it. And you need to see it quickly so you can apply the label and understand the context of that picture and is that a live victim. But when you've already graded that and you're looking to create your reports, you can either put privacy mode on, so therefore you don't see any of the images, you just see the privacy mode message when you're doing your reports, or just put grayscale mode on. That just means that you're not going to have that memory and that recall of the picture as quickly. So everything we're doing here is kind of in-app little bits to help you and sort of protect you. But when you're grading and you're doing all your work, you don't really notice this, but everything's getting saved back to the local database. And the local database allows investigators for managers to have a separate application. This is what we call the S21 Wellbeing Monitor. This would allow you as a team manager to track that exposure level of all of your investigators. So we could see a label breakdown, we could see a label breakdown per user, We can see average scores per sort of grading per hour. And this data is kind of in its infancy. We've got the data. We're now trying to really work with some agencies to track what we can learn and where we can identify risk patterns.
And how you can use it, yeah.
And this is where it really is useful. I mean, we don't. This isn't a performance managing software. That's what we sort of stress. This is there for agencies and customers to be able to say to their SIOs, to the senior management, look how much material the team are going through. And maybe that's there to justify additional equipment. Maybe it's there for justification of additional staff or for decompression days. And I think police forces are realising it's important the job gets done, but if your staff aren't prepared to do the work anymore, or you're starting to see a drop off in performance because you're burning your staff out, or they're leaving and you've now got to go and employ new staff and train them, that's where there's that hidden cost. And you've got to put the protection mechanisms in place to protect your organisation and your staff. And I know, Paul, we've spoken previously, and we suspect this will happen more. For organisations to be fined for not protecting their staff is going to happen more and more often. And
Yeah,
I think the fine levels are going to be very high. And I think, sadly, we'll end up seeing that happen more often before people really do take a stand and realise that there is a real danger when we're dealing with CSAM investigations to staff exposure. We've never had the figures. And until now, this is where we can now start to create a breakdown per member of staff, the times and dates that they examined, which exhibits that yield the highest number of images that contain CSAM and dangerous material. And what we're hoping to do is work with agencies to say, can we get the investigator wellbeing monitors to start driving some safety mechanisms that organisations can put in place, stopping the grading of indecent images at high risk times, stopping on the Friday afternoons. When we start to see a dip in performance from staff, not to say, hey, you're not working fast enough, but to actually look and say, is there a problem there? Are we identifying a trend that this person is probably overexposed and getting burnout? And I know that's where your passion is. I know you've put a lot of effort into that, and will continue to do so. But this is the idea of having the data that we can start to make those informed decisions with.
I mean, I think the development that you guys have put into the wellbeing monitor is phenomenal. And I haven't seen another piece of software on the market which has put this amount of development into this side of things. And having that in the background where the managers can then very quickly search to see what level of exposure a DFI or a team of DFIs have had, and gives them an early indication of DFIs who may be coming susceptible to the known stresses, and do something about it at the earliest opportunity. I really, really like that well-being monitor. I think it's a fantastic development.
Yeah, thank you. Like I say, we want to do more. We're trying to prioritize how do we tease out more material that we can get from the end users, that performance. We need their feedback. We want to know how do they actually feel while they're doing their investigations. But also, this doesn't need to be limited to our tool. And one of the things we've always said as a company is we don't like this idea of companies having a monopoly and closing their ecosystem. I think when we look at CSAM, we all have to put our big boy pants on and work nicely as a community and have the export and the import capabilities across the whole infrastructure. But for us, when we look at the wellbeing side of it, yes, we're collecting the data for our product when you're grading with our tool. I don't see a problem that if you're using Griffi or if you're using Cellbrite or any of the tools, why can they not actually provide us the data that they see? That when you're labeling with their product, could that not feed into the database that we have? Could we now actually start to have that cross-company acceptance that we all need to work together to protect the users? That's where I'd like to see this go. I'd like to see all of the products feed into a solution that, I'll be honest with you, we don't make money of it. The wellbeing monitor, we give it to managers for free. It's just part of our offering because we know that the data for us is useful to identify that risk. And we'd love to see other vendors start saying, well, people can categorize and grade in our solutions, and yeah, sure, we're happy just to have a connection into your database. There's nothing valuable there, but it's the exposure levels that hopefully managers then can identify from all of the products, not just ours.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I'm going to ask you the big question before we call it a night. What is the pricing point for Semantics 21?
So we are open. We're fully transparent in our pricing. The price I normally advertise in dollars because again the biggest market in the world is the US. So LASEri-X, the main product, it's the highest price you'll ever pay is $2,000. So if you pay for that, you'll get all the AI, you'll get the databases, you access the Global Alliance database. The Wellbeing solution is provided within the solution. The Wellbeing monitor for your managers is included within that price as well. You install the software. There's no servers. There's no cloud requirement. You just install it on a standard forensic machine, and you're good to go. So yeah, normally around about the £1,500 mark, about $2,000 mark. But again, some site licenses we have a lot cheaper. We've just donated over 1 million. Well, over this year, we'll have donated £1.5 million in pounds in software to developing nations where obviously they either don't have the finances or special project teams that we work with. Homeland Security in America for the HERO project, where ex-military vets that are injured that are now gone into policing to help rescue kids, and they're dealing with CSAM investigations. We've always said they will never pay. So they get our software completely free of charge, and they always will
That's
do,
amazing.
because, again, we like the mission. It's people that are coming from horrible environments of war, and they still want to help do a public service. So it's only right that we help them out as well. So, yeah, we try and keep our prices as low as we possibly can. We are a business. We do have to operate and actually pay our salaries and keep the development team going. We are lucky. We do get a lot of help, like I say, from big companies, big tech firms that see what we're trying to do, and they do try and help us out as well. So we really appreciate that. And links to academia. Academia is definitely one of the things that we're really impressed to and happy to work with. Again, because they've got some very bright, talented minds there that we want to help, and they want to help us look at where do we go in the future. So yeah, it's a good job.
And just before we go, one other question that's just popped into my mind. If the users have a particular requirement for the software, how flexible are the developers around including that requirement?
Unbelievably. We rely on the feedback of users to say, what do you see that you like? What technology trends are you seeing? How do the offenders operate? And let us know. So, for instance, QR codes. We were told by one of the tech firms QR codes are being used to hide messages on online platforms. We're like, well, that's quite clever, nifty way of trying to get around and obfuscate your conversations that we all know text messages are being read by the big platforms, but QR codes weren't. So literally within minutes of telling the developers this is what bad guys are doing, we had already a proof of concept of how to detect QR codes, translate QR codes, and probably within a day, it was in the product and it was available. We have Swiss customers that have just come on board that said our labels don't look like that anymore. We've changed our grading labels. Within half an hour, we had a version of the software with all their brand new labels to them, so they could continue to use and grade using their label system. I don't think you will get that level of support or customization from many companies in the world within digital forensics, but we have to react as fast as we can. So yeah, we're always open to new ideas, new suggestions. We've just done a school badge lookup for the whole of the United States. We now have 130,000 schools for all their logos and badges we've added in. We're now getting other countries approaching us saying, love the idea, we have the same problem. Would you be prepared to research those school badges for our country as well? And of course we will. So we'll follow the demand, but we'll add things in that customers need.
Actually, on the subject of the school badges system that Semantics have developed, for those who are interested, Forensic Focus have just released a great article specifically about that. So if you go to the Forensic Focus website, you'll be able to read all about that in depth.
And I think one thing we missed off the article is if you're not one of our customers and you have a logo or a badge that you're saying it's part of my investigation, you may use one of our competitors' solutions, message us. Tell us what the description of the badge is, or find an agency that has our software, they'll do it for you, but just describe the badge to us, we'll tell you which school it is. So this isn't sort of a lock-in, you have to buy our product. We've done the research, we're sat on it. It literally takes our team a couple of minutes and we can help you locate a school badge, even if you're not one of our customers. So yeah, don't be shy to not approach us, even if you're not one of our active customers. Not a problem at all.
I know there's far more AI generated or AI applications built into S21. Sadly, we haven't got time to show them all tonight. But one of them that sort of particularly pops into my mind is the AI application, which also helps identify areas.
Yeah, so the location lookup is amazing. And when I was first shown the technology here, I was very skeptical. Most cops are. And I was like, how the hell does that do that? It's completely offline, where you would expect the system to be online. So if anyone's seen it, it's called AI Location Prediction. It's a completely offline system. It's part of LASEri-X, the same program. You can either select an image in your case, or if you have an external image from social media, maybe outside in a field or a town centre. And all you do is you provide the image to the system, and you say, where is it? And the AI has 5 models. The 5 models then examine the content of the picture, not the EXIF data. So we don't need the EXIF data at all. If you think we're cheating, take a screenshot. And literally, it will look at the detail of the picture and try and work out where it's from. And as long as the 5 AI models are quite close together, there's a strong probability it's in that position. Last week in America, we had some American investigators did exactly the same thing as I would have done. Prove it. They took a photograph inside the foyer of the hotel and said, okay, whereabouts is this? And literally the AI had detected it was about a mile and a half down the road from where the actual picture was taken. So yeah, it was really, the accuracy was amazing in the middle of Florida. But this thing is designed for historically sort of military intelligence type investigations, but now available to all domestic police. So yeah, there's cases where we have child abuse cases where is the child in the UK or are they abroad in Europe somewhere? If we've got a series of pictures, we can start to build a picture of where that child potentially was being injured or being attacked. Or if you've got a suspect that's just been stupid, who's photographed themselves on social media and they're on the run from the police, you can probably work out where they are and then go and get them. So incredibly clever technology. Again, we set the challenge to people. If you don't believe us, trial the software, give it a go. It's just part of the package. We will tell you, it won't be guaranteed every time. But so far, I think we're probably up to 60 cases now where we've had successes in locating suspects or victims that we've been made aware of. So already the technology was released at the beginning of the year, and we get customer feedback of it worked. We were really impressed. It's found the suspect, it's found the victim, which is great for us to hear.
That's fantastic. Tom, thanks very much for joining me tonight on the Forensic Focus podcast. The software is obviously available through Semantics, and people can contact you how?
Yeah, so contact either sales@semantics21.com or tom@semantics21.com. If I want to get bombarded now with lots of spam from people, but always just go onto our website, and obviously we can communicate with you straight away. And again, any of our customers, we now offer our customers WhatsApp support. So it's just a text message, and we communicate via text message. So we've gone like we're teenagers. We communicate as quickly as we can on WhatsApp. So again, just to make life a little bit easier, to deal with support portals. Let's get rid of that. Let's make it frictionless and as easy as possible for everyone.
That's fantastic, Tom. And long may the development of the well-being aspect of the software continue. Thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks for having us, Paul.
Thanks, Tom.